When people talk about Wes Craven, the conversation tends to shift around how people feel whenever they watch his movies. Whether they're uncomfortable, whether they feel pushed, whether the violence goes too far, you hear the same arguments repeated again and again, even when the film is different. That's not a coincidence. I am Brandy, otherwise known as the Terrorific Lady, and welcome back to Retro Horror School, where we discuss, dissect, and analyze horror from the 1970s through the 2010s, and discuss horror as memory, identity, and survival. I want to give a quick thank you to everyone who subscribed and commented after watching my Event Horizon video. I read all those conversations, I try to reply to every comment, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness. And if you're new here, this is what we do. We slow down and we pay attention to how horror actually works. This is the first video of the Wes Craven retrospective series, and before we get started on this series, I want to set one expectation. This isn't about simply listing his films. This isn't about ranking his films and talking about which is good and which is bad. It's about how his work asks to be watched and what happens when people don't slow down enough to notice that. Wes Craven, he didn't make his films to comfort his audience. He made them to corner them, remove all those easy exits, and force confrontation with violence, power, and our own limits as viewers. If you pay attention to how Craven is discussed, a pattern seems to show up pretty quick. His films are often described as intelligent and thoughtful, almost in the same breath as crude or cruel. People admire his ideas, but can be a little hesitant about the experience. Praise often comes wrapped in explanation as if the work needs to be justified before it can be acknowledged. And criticism seems to circle the same pressure point. How close the viewer is being asked to stay to what is happening on screen. Discomfort gets smoothed over by its framing. Violence becomes commentary. Cruelty becomes of its time. The work gets elevated just enough to create distance from what it feels like to watch it. Conversations drift towards architecture, legacy, influence, because those are easier places to stand than the moment when the camera doesn't cut away and the viewer has to sit with what they're seeing. That lingering is important. Craven's work repeatedly refuses quick exits. It doesn't always offer relief through irony, awareness, or moral clarity. Safe places fail. Authority figures don't really protect anyone. Knowing the rules doesn't guarantee control, and even survival at times comes with compromise. Those choices aren't accidental, and they are a big part of why the same debates keep resurfacing, no matter which of Wes Craven's films you're talking about. Again and again, his work insists that fear is something that presses back, asking two things: how much we're willing to watch and what it costs to keep watching. There's also recent conversations get slippery when issues like race, representation, and power come up in his work. Systems of control are tied to ownership, space, and authority, and racism is enforced through property and power. Craven has rightly been praised for including Black characters in his movies and centering them in ways that were uncommon in mainstream horror at the time. Representation alone doesn't resolve the questions of voice and control that people have. Representation is often treated as a conclusion rather than as a starting point, and sometimes praised without always stopping to ask who has a voice, who has control, and how perspective shapes what's being shown. So when I say that this retrospective series is about how to watch Wes Craven, this is what I mean. We're going to pay attention to where the viewer is being placed. We're going to notice where watching feels less passive and more involved. We're going to watch for those moments where people usually rush to soften, explain, or move on, because those moments tend to tell you exactly where the pressure is. This isn't a completionist run of all his horror films. I believe he did 18 different horror films, so this retrospective series is not a completionist run of all of his horror films, and it's not trying to clean up his career into something nice and neat. Focusing on impact instead of coverage lets us stay with the films of his where the ideas are the clearest and where the viewing experience is hard to ignore. Craven's career is a little bit messier than some of his peers. And that messiness is part of the reason why his work keeps producing this sense of unease even decades later. Quick note, if you want to support Retro Horror School and to help keep this kind of work stable and sustainable, I do have a Patreon. I share extended thoughts, side discussions, materials, resources that aren't going to always fit into a main episode or a video. It's there if you want it, no pressure, but it directly supports this channel. For now, this is the frame, not answers or rankings, just attention. Because with Wes Craven, how you watch matters, and once you start noticing that, it is very hard to unsee. Next up, we're going to start with The Last House on the Left, and we're going to put this lens to the test. As always, thank you for being here. Class is dismissed. For now. I'll see you next time. Bye!